Chapter 5, The Lies That Kept Us Apart. Lena couldn't breathe. She clutched the letter tighter, her heart pounding so loudly she could barely hear anything else. If something happens to me, don't let them take Theo. You know what they did to me. You know who I am. Alina Blackwood had been afraid, not just of someone, but of something so terrible she had left behind a desperate warning. And if Lena had truly been Elena, then who had taken her away? And why had Damian let it happen? Lena stormed down the grand staircase, the letter clutched in her hand. She didn't care if it was late, if the hallways of Blackwood Manor stretched long and eerie under the dim glow of the chandeliers. She needed answers. Now. When she reached Damian's study, she didn't knock. She pushed the door open and stepped inside. Damian looked up from his desk, his expression calm, too calm. "You've been going through things that don't belong to you," he said. Lena threw the letter onto the desk between them. "Whose things? Mine?" A flicker of something crossed his face, but he masked it quickly. "You're mistaken." "No," she snapped. "You're lying, and I'm tired of your lies." She shoved the album forward, flipping it open to the pictures of Elena Blackwood. Her. "Tell me why I look exactly like her. Tell me why Theo calls me his mother. Tell me why I know this house, this piano, this lullaby, why I dream of shattered glass and a man screaming my name, why I feel like I've lived this life before." Damian stood, his gaze darkening. "That's enough, Lena." "No," she whispered, voice shaking. "No, it's not. Not until you tell me the truth." For the first time, she saw something crack in him. A moment's hesitation, a ghost of pain in his stormy eyes, and then he said it. A single devastating word. "You were my wife." Lena staggered back as if she had been struck. The air left her lungs. The walls around her seemed to blur. She had suspected it, had felt it in the depths of her soul, but hearing it, confirming it, was something else entirely. Her fingers trembled. "Then why did you lie to me?" Damian exhaled sharply. He ran a hand down his face as if he were exhausted by the weight of the truth. "Because you weren't supposed to come back." Lena sank into the chair across from him, her body numb. Damian slowly sat back down as well, rubbing his temples. He was silent for a long moment before he finally spoke again. "We were married for 5 years," he said, his voice low, restrained. "And then, 4 years ago, you died." Her chest tightened. "No, I didn't." His eyes flicked to her, dark and unreadable. "You were in a car accident. The authorities, they told me you were dead." Lena's breath caught. The dream, the shattered glass, the voice calling her name. "But that wasn't true," she whispered. Damian's jaw clenched. "No." Lena's hands curled into fists. "Then why didn't you look for me?" His entire body went rigid. "I did." His voice was sharper now, rough with something dangerous, something broken. "For months I did everything to find out what really happened to you, but no one could explain it. Your body was never recovered, just blood, just wreckage." And then he inhaled sharply, closing his eyes as if trying to push back a memory too painful to relive. "Then what?" Lena pressed, his fists clenched on the desk. "Then I was told to stop looking." The room turned ice cold. Lena shivered. "By who?" Damian's gaze flickered, just for a second, but it was enough for her to know. Someone powerful had made him stop. And he had listened. She stared at him, pain curling in her chest. "You gave up on me." Damian's expression darkened. "It wasn't that simple, Lena." Tears burned in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "It was for me. Because while you were grieving, while you were moving on, I was out there somewhere, alive." Silence. Thick, suffocating silence. Damian was breathing hard now, his jaw tight, his fists trembling at his sides. And then he whispered, "I never moved on." Lena flinched. "I never stopped loving you," he said hoarsely. "I never let another woman take your place, and when I saw you again, I thought I was losing my mind." She swallowed hard. "So you lied to me instead?" "I was trying to protect you." "From what?" she whispered. But Damian didn't answer, because whatever had happened 4 years ago, whoever had erased her from existence, was still out there, watching, waiting. And now, they knew she was back. Lena stood, her hands trembling. "I want to know everything, right now." Damian exhaled sharply. "No, not yet." Her eyes narrowed. "You still don't trust me?" He stood, crossing the space between them in an instant. His hands caught her wrists, firm but gentle. "I trust you," he murmured. "I don't trust them." A shiver ran down her spine. "Who are they?" Damian hesitated, and in that hesitation she realized something terrifying. He knew. He had always known. But instead of telling her, he had let her believe she was a stranger. a nobody, and that betrayal hurt worse than anything. She pulled back from him, her voice shaking. I want the truth, Damian. All of it. His expression darkened. And if the truth puts you in danger, I don't care. He let out a rough exhale, running a hand through his hair. Then you leave me no choice. Lena stilled. What? Damian's gaze locked onto hers, intense and unyielding. Tomorrow, he said, voice low, dangerous. I'll take you to the only place that has the answers. Lena swallowed. Where? His lips pressed into a thin line. The hospital where you were last seen alive. Chapter 6, A Love That Won't Fade. Lena tossed and turned in the dark, the quiet of the night only amplifying the storm inside her mind. Damian's words echoed relentlessly in her thoughts, each one sinking deeper, leaving a trail of confusion and pain. You were my wife. You weren't supposed to come back. Tomorrow, I'll take you to the only place that has the answers. She couldn't escape them. They clung to her like a second skin. The weight of his confession pushing down on her chest, forcing her to relive everything she'd lost. She had been his. She had been Theo's mother. But that life had been stolen from her, wiped away as if it had never existed. And Damian, the man she once loved, had let them erase her from his world. The bitterness of betrayal was a familiar ache in her heart. But what terrified her wasn't the hurt. It was the way something inside her still responded to him. The way her pulse quickened at the memory of his voice, how her breath caught when his gaze lingered just a moment too long. She was angry, so angry at him, yet she still felt him, still felt the pull between them, as if the past never truly left. That realization was a gut punch, a reminder that some bonds, no matter how much time had passed, refused to fade, and it scared her more than anything. The next morning, the atmosphere in the car was suffocating. Damian drove in silence, his grip tight on the wheel. Lena sat stiffly in the passenger seat, staring out at the endless stretch of road. Neither spoke, but the tension between them was thick, electric. She should have been afraid of the answers waiting for her at the hospital. But right now, the only thing she feared was him, because she was starting to remember things. Not clearly, not fully, but in fragments. The warmth of his hand in hers, the low rumble of his voice whispering against her skin, the way his lips used to brush over her temple as if she were something fragile, something precious. Lena swallowed hard. She couldn't think like that. Damian had let her disappear, and she would never forgive him for that. When they arrived at St. Augustine's Medical Center, Lena hesitated. She stared up at the towering building, an eerie sense of unease crawling up her spine. Something was here, something that had been waiting for her all along. Damian walked beside her, his posture tense, protective. Are you sure you want to do this? Lena glanced at him. Are you? His jaw clenched. But he said nothing. They stepped inside. The sterile scent of antiseptic filled the air. The walls were an unremarkable white, the floors polished to an unnatural shine. And yet, Lena's heart pounded wildly. Something about this place felt familiar. A nurse approached, polite but guarded. Can I help you? Damian stepped forward. We need access to patient records from 4 years ago. Lena's breath caught. The day she disappeared. The nurse frowned. That information is restricted. Damian pulled out a card. Black, sleek, official. Make an exception. The woman hesitated, glancing between them, but finally nodded. Follow me. The room they were led to was small, cold. The nurse sifted through old records, the click, click, click of her nails against the files the only sound in the room. Then she stopped. Brows furrowing, she pulled out a thin, worn file. Lena's stomach twisted. The nurse opened it, frowning deeper. That's strange. What? Lena's voice was barely a whisper. There's almost nothing here, the nurse murmured, flipping through the pages. No detailed records, no discharge papers, just... She paused, then turned the file around, sliding it across the table. A single page. Lena's gaze locked onto it, her pulse roaring in her ears. Elena Blackwood. Admitted, August 17th. Condition, critical. Status, transferred. Lena's breath caught. Transferred to where? The nurse shook her head. It doesn't say. Damian's expression darkened. Who authorized the transfer? The nurse hesitated, then flipped the paper over, and there, at the bottom of the page, Damian Blackwood. The world tilted. Lena's vision blurred. She turned to him, her chest heaving. You, her voice cracked. You were the one who sent me away. Damian went pale. No, that's not possible. But the paper was right there. His signature, his name. He had signed away her life. Lena staggered back, shaking. You lied to me. Damian's eyes were wild now, desperate. Lena, listen to me. I never signed this. But she was already stepping away, hands trembling, heart breaking. You let me disappear. Damian caught her wrist, his grip tight, urgent. I would never. Then why is your name here? She cried. He didn't have an answer. And that silence, that horrible, gut-wrenching silence, was enough. Lena didn't remember walking out of the hospital. She barely remembered getting into the car, barely noticed the rain beginning to fall outside the windshield. All she could think about was that paper, that signature. Damian had been a part of this. He had claimed to love her, to grieve her, to never move on. But in the end, he had still let her go. The ride home was suffocating. Damian didn't speak. Neither did she. But when they arrived back at Blackwood Manor, she didn't head for her room. She turned to him, rain soaking into her clothes, her breath unsteady. I can't stay here, she whispered. Damian's face twisted. Lena, I can't trust you. His jaw clenched. You can. She shook her head. No, not anymore. His hands curled into fists at his sides, his entire body rigid with tension. You remember something, don't you? Lena swallowed hard. Yes, not everything. Not clearly. But in that moment, staring at him, she knew. She had loved him, she had trusted him once, and he had betrayed her. A lump formed in her throat. I need time. Damian was breathing hard now, his gaze locked onto hers, raw and unreadable. But then he nodded, not because he wanted to, but because he understood. And that hurt the most, because no matter how much pain lay between them, the love hadn't faded. And it never would. Chapter 7. The Betrayal Unveiled. Lena had always believed that nothing could break her more than waking up without a past, without a name, without a home. She was wrong, because this standing in front of the man she had once loved, knowing that his signature had stolen her life from her, was worse. Damian had lied, and no matter how much she wanted to believe him, the evidence was undeniable. He had signed the papers that sent her away, and that betrayal shattered something deep inside her. The storm outside had only worsened, rain slashing against the windows as Lena moved through the halls of Blackwood Manor. Her hands trembled as she packed the few belongings she had. She didn't belong here. Not anymore. When she reached the door, she found Damian already waiting for her. He looked like a man on the verge of losing everything. Don't do this, he said. Lena's heart twisted painfully. I have to. Damian stepped closer. You don't understand. I would never. He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his damp hair. I don't remember signing those papers. I don't know how my name got on them. Lena clenched her fists. But it's there. Damian, it's there. His expression darkened. Someone forged it. She shook her head. Then why did you stop looking for me? Silence. A silence so loud it made her head spin. And in that moment, she knew. Maybe Damian hadn't known the full truth. Maybe he hadn't willingly betrayed her. But he had let it happen. He had accepted her death too easily. She swallowed hard, gripping the strap of her bag. I need to find out the truth for myself. Damian's jaw tightened. Let me help you. Lena hesitated. Everything in her wanted to say yes, but the wound was too fresh, the trust too shattered. She stepped back. I need to do this alone. Damian inhaled sharply, his hands curled into fists, but he didn't stop her. He couldn't, because he knew this was the consequence of his silence. And now he had to watch her walk away. Lena didn't have much to go on, but she knew one thing. Whoever had erased her life had been powerful enough to forge legal documents and control Damian. And there was only one person she could think of who fit that description. Edmund Blackwood, Damian's father, the man who had built the Blackwood Empire, the man who had never approved of their marriage, and the only man Damian had ever feared. Lena's hands trembled as she dialed a number she wasn't sure would even work. After a few rings, a deep voice answered. Didn't expect to hear from you, Edmund said smoothly. Lena's breath hitched. I need to see you. A chuckle. So you finally remember, don't you? Her pulse pounded. You knew. I always knew. His voice was calm, too calm, and that was when she realized he had been waiting for her to call. A chill ran down her spine. Meet me at the Blackwood estate, Edmund said. Let's see if you're ready for the truth. The line went dead. Lena stared at the phone in her hand. She had thought leaving Damian behind would give her space to breathe. But now she knew. She was walking straight into the lion's den. The Blackwood estate was colder than she remembered. Lena stepped into the grand, dimly lit study where Edmund Blackwood sat behind an ornate desk, sipping a glass of scotch. He didn't look surprised to see her. I should congratulate you, he said, setting his glass down. Most people don't come back from the dead twice. Lena's jaw clenched. What did you do to me? Edmund smirked. What I had to. She slammed the hospital file onto his desk. You forged Damian's signature. You erased my existence. Her voice shook. You stole my life. Edmund leaned back in his chair. You never belonged in it to begin with. A cold, bitter silence filled the room. Lena's heart pounded. Why? His smirk faded. Because you were weak, she stiffened. Edmund stood circling her like a predator. Damian was meant to take over this family, to be strong. But you... His gaze flicked over her, full of contempt. You made him weak. Lena's hands curled into fists. So you tried to get rid of me? Edmund let out a low chuckle. No, dear. I did get rid of you. A chill shot through her. Her voice was barely a whisper. You had me killed. Edmund's expression remained neutral. You were supposed to die? Lena felt her knees weaken. Oh God, he had ordered her death, and Damian had never known. Or worse, he had known, and he had been too afraid to fight back. She felt sick. Edmund took another sip of his drink, upset, completely unaffected. I should have done a better job, he mused. I suppose that's my only regret. Lena's breath hitched. This man had stolen her life, her memories, her family. He had nearly taken Theo's mother away from him forever, and he didn't even care. A slow, burning rage built inside her. You think you can control Damian? She whispered. That he'll just stand by and let you do this again? Edmund smirked. Damian has no choice. He never did. Lena's hands trembled. For 4 years, she had been a ghost, a forgotten woman. But not anymore. She lifted her chin. You're wrong. Edmund raised a brow. Lena turned toward the door. You don't control him. She met his gaze, steady and unwavering. And you don't control me. Then she walked away. Because Edmund Blackwood had stolen her life once. He wasn't going to do it again. The drive back to Blackwood Manor felt endless. Lena's chest was tight, her breath uneven. Edmund had taken everything from her. But Damian was still hers. Because even though he had been afraid, even though he had been silent, he had never betrayed her. And for the first time since waking up, Lena finally understood. Damian had never let her go. He had just been too afraid to fight back. Not anymore. Not now. Not when she had come back to fight for him. Chapter 8, Choosing Love, Choosing Family. Lena had spent the last 4 years as a ghost, a forgotten woman. She had lived in the shadows of a life stolen from her. But now, as she stood at the doorstep of Blackwood Manor, rain soaking through her clothes, heart pounding in her chest, she was done being erased. She wasn't just coming back for answers anymore. She was coming back to claim the life that had been taken from her. The doors swung open before she could even knock. Damian was there, eyes dark with worry, chest rising and falling with uneven breaths. Relief flashed across his face before it was quickly masked with something heavier. You went to see him, he said. Lena's fingers clenched at her sides. Yes. Damian exhaled sharply. Lena, you don't know what he's capable of. She let out a dry laugh. Oh, I do. She stepped inside, dripping water onto the polished floors, staring at the man who had once been her husband. The man she had loved so deeply it had destroyed her. Damian, he admitted it, she whispered. Your father tried to kill me. Damian flinched, his jaw tightened, his fists clenching at his sides. I know. Lena's breath caught. He knew. Her stomach twisted painfully. Since when? Damian's gaze was tormented. Not at first, not when they told me you were dead, but after a year, when I started asking questions, when I tried to dig into what happened to you. He shut every door in my face. His voice was low, hoarse. That's when I knew. That's when I realized he had done something to you. Lena's heart pounded. And you didn't fight him? Damian's hands trembled at his sides. I did. I fought in every way I could, but he threatened everyone around me, Lena. He told me if I kept digging, Theo would be next. Her breath hitched. Theo. Damian's only weakness. Their son. Lena's anger wavered as a terrible realization hit her. Damian had been trapped. His silence, his inaction, it hadn't been out of indifference. It had been out of fear. She wanted to be furious with him, to tell him he should have fought harder. But looking at him now, seeing the way his hands shook, the way guilt darkened his eyes, he had suffered too. For 4 years, he had been shackled by his father's threats, just like she had been shackled by a stolen past. And suddenly, it wasn't anger she felt anymore. It was grief. For all the years they had lost, for all the love they could have had, for all the time that had been stolen from them. Lena. Damian's voice was raw as he took a step toward her, but she took a step back. He froze. I'm not saying I forgive you, she whispered. Not yet. Damian's eyes darkened with pain, but he nodded. Lena swallowed hard. But I know now that I'm not the only one who was hurt, and I won't let him. Her voice shook. I won't let your father take any more from us. Damian's breath was unsteady. What are you saying? She met his gaze. I'm saying we end this. Damian's expression hardened. Then, for the first time in 4 years, he looked like the man she had fallen in love with. Not Edmund Blackwood's heir. Not a man trapped by his father's power, but her Damian, the man who would burn the world down for his family. And she knew. He was ready to fight. It took days. Days of gathering evidence, of speaking with the right people, of finding the weaknesses in Edmund Blackwood's empire. But when they struck hard. The board members of Blackwood Enterprises turned on him the moment Lena and Damian presented the forged documents. The media devoured the scandal, exposing his illegal dealings, his manipulation, his crimes. And when the police arrived at the grand Blackwood estate, Edmund Blackwood was no longer a king, just a man whose empire had crumbled beneath him. As they led him away in handcuffs, he turned to Damian, expression unreadable. You think you've won? Edmund murmured. Damian's face was stone. No, I think we're finally free. And for the first time in his life, he was right. A week later, Lena stood outside Blackwood Manor, watching as the first hints of sunrise touched the sky. She felt lighter. The past still lingered, but it didn't suffocate her anymore. She wasn't lost. She wasn't forgotten. She was Lena Blackwood. And for the first time in years, she had a future. She turned as footsteps approached. Damian. He stopped beside her, silent for a long moment. Then, softly, You're staying. Lena exhaled. Yes. His shoulders relaxed. But before he could say anything else, she added, For Theo. She saw the flicker of pain in his eyes, but he nodded. I know. And maybe that was the truth for now. Maybe she wasn't ready to say she was staying for him. Maybe they were still healing, still finding their way back to each other. But when Damian turned, their fingers brushed, and he didn't pull away. Neither did she, because love, real love, didn't fade overnight, and maybe, just maybe, it was worth fighting for. Epilogue, a new beginning. The garden was quiet. Lena sat on a stone bench, watching as Theo ran through the grass, laughter ringing in the air. Damian sat beside her, silent for a long moment. Then softly, I never stopped loving you. Lena's breath hitched. She turned to him, meeting his gaze. I know. Damian hesitated. Is there still a chance? Lena looked at Theo, at the boy who had unknowingly brought them back together, at the man who had once been her world. Then, slowly, she reached for Damian's hand and held on. We'll find out together. And for the first time in years, the future was theirs to choose. 1 year later. The Blackwood estate had always felt too large, too empty. For years, it had been a house filled with ghosts. But now, it was a home. Lena stood in the garden, watching the golden afternoon sunlight filter through the trees. The laughter of a child echoed through the air, light and carefree. Theo. Her son. Her heart still swelled at the thought. A year had passed since she uncovered the truth, since she reclaimed her life, her name, and the little boy who had unknowingly led her back to where she belonged. And now she wasn't afraid to call this place home. She turned as footsteps approached. Damian. His dark eyes found hers, the same quiet intensity in them as always. But there was something else now. Peace. A year ago there had been too many wounds, too many ghosts standing between them, but time had softened the edges of their pain. Damian stopped in front of her, watching as Theo ran circles around them, holding a toy airplane in his small hands. He's happy, Lena murmured. Damian nodded. Because you're here. Her chest tightened. There was a time when she wouldn't have believed that. A time when she thought she had lost everything. But now, she knew better. She hadn't lost everything. She had found it again. She glanced up at Damian, her fingers brushing against his. A year ago, she wasn't ready to love him again. She wasn't ready to forgive, but slowly, day by day, he had proved that love wasn't just about grand gestures. It was about showing up, for her, for Theo, for the family they had once lost. And today, as his fingers curled around hers, as warmth settled in her chest, she knew. She was ready. Lena, Damian said softly. She turned to him, heart pounding. He exhaled slowly, searching her face. Stay. Lena's breath caught. I already have. Damian's lips curved. Then stay forever. Lena let out a quiet laugh, blinking back the emotions rising in her chest. Then, without hesitation, she kissed him. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't desperate. It was slow, deep, certain. A promise. When they pulled apart, Damian's forehead rested against hers, his breath warm against her skin. Forever? He murmured. She smiled. Forever. And as Theo giggled in the background, as the sun dipped below the horizon, as Damian held her close, Lena knew she had finally found her way home. And that's the end of I Got Hired as a Nanny, but the child looks exactly like me. Lena and Damian's journey was filled with heartbreak, mystery, and shocking betrayals. But in the end, love and family won. Their slow burn romance, the deep emotional wounds they had to heal, and the truth that finally set them free made this story one filled with angst, suspense, and redemption. But their story doesn't have to end here. If you enjoyed this emotional, twist-filled romance, make sure to subscribe for more. There are plenty of heart-wrenching, dramatic, and deeply romantic stories coming your way, and you won't want to miss them. So hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, and let me know your favorite moment from Lena and Damian's journey. Until next time, happy reading.